Hi JD, thank you so much for joining us today at the writing room.
Well, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah. I was speaking last night at a speaking event last night, so my throat's slightly kind of dry and feels weirdly swollen today. So I don't know if it's just projecting to a room full of people or if I've caught some horrible illness along the way. But hopefully it's the former.
Yeah, let's hope it was not the latter
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Whereabouts are you calling from today?
I'm in Fort William in the Highlands of Scotland, right at the foot of Ben Nevis. I'm sitting in
Lovely.
my office. I've pushed all the rubbish out the site so it looks vaguely clean. And yeah, so it's raining because Fort William is the wettest place in Europe and has been for about 3 years running now. I think last year it rained 300 days out of 365.
Did it?
So yeah, so it's quite, it's very green. Everyone goes
Yeah,
like, "Oh, it's very green, isn't it?" It's like, yeah, it's green, but it's very wet. So yes, so I'm in Fort William.
wonderful. If that's okay with you, we'll just dive into the first question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so please can you introduce a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I am JD Kirk. Well, I'm not actually JD Kirk. Well, that's a lie. My real name is Barry Hutchison. JD Kirk is a made-up pen name. I don't even know what the JD stands for. The reason I created it was I used to be a children's author, and I kind of didn't want kids finding all these books about murder and kidnapping and all that stuff. So yeah, I write Scottish crime fiction set in the Highlands because I'm actually quite a lazy person, and that means I don't have to do any research because I know all the locations pretty well. So there are 15 books in the DCI Logan series at the moment. I'm working on book 16, and there are three books, four in December, in a spin-off series, the Robert Hoon thriller series.
Wonderful, thank you. Please can you tell us a little bit about your writing and publication journey from kind of start to finish?
Oh, well, it's quite long.
I know.
Professionally, I started writing. Well, I started writing books in 2010. I'll take you back a bit. I'll jump
Take us
back to the start.
back.
I was 9 years old, so really far back. I didn't actually like reading books that much when I was younger. I read loads of comics, like
Mm.
The Beano and the Dandy and Spider Man and all that stuff. And I had a teacher in primary school who hated comics and hated the fact that I wouldn't read books and only read books. And there was a new librarian came to our local library, and we got taken along to meet her and to kind of introduce ourselves as a class. And the teacher made us all stand up and tell the librarian what sort of books we like to read, and she would then direct us to which parts of the library these books were in, you know. And the teacher left me till the end and said, "Right, Barry, stand up. Tell Mrs. McAllister what you like to read." And I could have really sheepishly said I like reading comics. And Mrs. McAllister went, "Oh, hang on a minute." And she went through the back and she came back out with this massive stack of comics, like this kind of foot high pile of comics. And she dumped them in front of me and said, "Well, there you go, read those." And I came back to the library every day and worked my way through these comics. And I kind of later realised that she was a bit like a kind of drug dealer, like a pusher. She got me started on the soft stuff, and then she would go like, "Well, how about a book as well?" And so we'd look at the stuff I was reading in comics, and she'd go, "Oh, that book is a bit like that." And she would start pushing these books on me, and I'd take these books home, and she got me hooked on reading. And I got to the point when I would go into the library and I would ask for specific types of books. So I would say, "I want a book about robots." And she would go, "Come with me to the robot section." And she would go over there and various other things. And one day I went in and for some reason, I'd become obsessed with ninjas,
Mm.
not the air fryers, but the, Japanese assassins. And I said, "I want a book about ninjas." And she said, "I don't have a book about ninjas." And I felt like betrayed by the library. Like I felt just devastated. And she said, "But hang on a minute." And she went through the back again, and she came back out with this notebook and a pencil, and said, "Go and write a book about ninjas." So I went away and I wrote this bloody awful story about ninjas, and I took it back to her. And to her credit, she not only read it, but she wrote my name on the spine of it and
Oh,
put it on the shelf. And it was, like these moments in films when the kind of clouds part and you get that big shaft of light comes down and you hear that, "Oh, heavenly choir" sort of thing. It was like that, seeing my name on this book on that shelf, and I thought that's what I want to do. And I wrote every day from then on, from when I was 9. And then when I was 17, I wrote a film script which got picked up by an American film company. And the company then quite quickly went bankrupt and the film never happened.
oh,
And then I wrote another film script a few years later and it got picked up by a British film company. That company also went bankrupt. That film never happened either. At which point I decided that I probably better not keep writing film scripts because I single-handedly brought the entire film industry to its knees. And I started kind of getting a couple of ideas for books and things. And when I was 30, I think, I sold a series of 6 books to HarperCollins. The HarperCollins children's books. It was a horror series called Invisible Fiends about a boy whose imaginary friend from when he's 4 comes back when he's 12 and tries to kill him in a variety of creative and horrible ways. So I wrote kids' books for about 10 years. I wrote kind of over 150 kids' books. And then in 2016, I was asked by a school way in the north of Scotland to talk about how kids could write their own books, to go in there and do a workshop about how kids could publish their own books. Sorry. And I had no idea, because as far as I was concerned, you typed up a book, you emailed it to London, and 6 months to 2 years later, a book arrived in the post. And that was my entire understanding of the process. So I thought, well, I'll look at Kindle, KDP, and see how I could self-publish a book, and then I can go and teach these kids how to do it.
Yeah.
And I self-published this book called Space Team, which was a comedy science fiction book, and put that up, and within a week it was outselling all of my children's books combined. And I thought, ooh, this is interesting.
This is interesting.
And I thought I'm going to write a second book. And I ended up writing 12 books in that series and 3 spin-offs and various other things. And I was actually in Glasgow at an event with Amazon where I was talking to the great Hilary Ross and her husband, and I mentioned this idea that I had for a crime fiction novel, and they were very encouraging about it and said, you should go and write it. And they were so encouraging, in fact, that when I found out later that I was going to meet them at the London Book Festival the following year, London Book Fair, sorry, the following year, I felt so guilty that I hadn't started it because they've been so encouraging. But I sat and wrote most of the book before the book fair, so I could say, "No, look, I've started." And that was A Litter of Bones, which was the first crime book I wrote, and that kind of outsold everything, by a magnitude of 100 to 1 or something.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question? Because halfway through that, I forgot what the question was.
No, that definitely does. Yeah.
I just kept talking.
No, that's amazing. Honestly, yeah, that's really, really interesting. And I think the thing is that we found with speaking to so many different authors is how they all have different journeys. And I especially love talking to people who've done both of them. And especially when you've done your traditional and then you've kind of come across Kindle Direct Publishing and been like, hang on.
Yeah, well, for me, it's been financially life-changing, but creatively life-changing as well. Because I was, especially in kids fiction, you can come up with ideas and you pitch them to the publisher, and they go, "Well, that's really good, but can you put a unicorn in it? Because unicorns are really hot right now." And you kind of go, "I don't really want to put it. It doesn't really fit." But then you go, "Well, then we're not publishing the book." So you go, "I just thought of somewhere where a unicorn could fit in it," and you end up it becomes a sort of compromised version of your vision. Not to sound too arty, but it sounds. That idea you started with becomes this watered down version, and it's almost written by committee because the sales and marketing team, they want to chuck in and go, "Well, we need to do that," and then it's got to be a series because standalones aren't doing well right now, so and then it's got to be aged for 7 to 9 and not 9 to 12, so it becomes this sort of really watered down version of this idea you had in your head. So now with KDP, it's like I have an idea, I write that book, and readers then decide if they want it or if they don't, and that's. Yeah. It really slims down the process, and so to kind of its purest form, it's good. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you kind of have so much creative control over doing it yourself.
Absolutely, all of it, and even things like I've been able to, when you sign with publishers, quite often you sign over all kinds of rights, so they'll take audio and they may or may not do an audiobook, or they take foreign rights and they may or may not exploit them. So you're left with all those. You can do all these different things. Today or yesterday, we just launched a range of merchandise inspired by the DCI Logan books, with all proceeds going to local charities. Kind of every 3 months the charity changes and the merchandise changes. It's all limited edition stuff, and all the money goes to a local charity. So even being able to do things like that, you just can't do when you sign a traditional publishing contract.
Yeah, exactly. What inspires you in writing? What kind of gets you going?
I think. For me, it's always been characters in general, so not even just the crime stuff. It's always about characters for me. I will come up with a character first, usually, or sometimes I'll come up with a storyline first, and then have to get a character that fits that. But generally, it's the character I come up with first, and then that develops the story. Because I generally take a character and I'll kind of throw like an incident, something that happens at them, and how they react to that is what makes the story. You know what I mean? It's not. So that's kind of quite organic. So for me, yeah, it's always been character. I think I've always had a. This is the first thing I've ever written that's been set in Scotland. But all my books, I think, have a sort of sense of Scottishness through them and a kind of a Scottish humour. Everything I wrote was always funny, not intentionally necessarily. Like the horror series I wrote for HarperCollins, I thought was like a proper, just scary, creepy. And the first book came out, and there was a review in the Guardian or something, and it said Mr. Mumbles is the funniest horror book I've ever read. And I thought it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be.
You're like, oops.
So I look back over it, and then I realised that it's just in that character interaction thing. I think there are no jokes in it. It's just the humour of back and forth, and that thing of being scared and laughing is quite often go hand in hand. That sort of feeling. So so those were funny. All the kids' books were funny. When it came to the crime fiction, I thought I want to be deadly serious, and I want to be it's just going to be dark, and it's going to be like these kind of psychological thriller type things. And I tried 3 or 4 attempts at doing that, starting the book like that, and it never really went anywhere. And then I just couldn't quite get the voice right. And then I wrote the version of the first line that appears in the actual book is the total collapse of Duncan Reed's life began with a gate in the arse end of nowhere. And when I wrote that, suddenly it clicked in what the voice for the book was going to be. So they are proper serious plots, but it's the character interaction that really interests me. So it's always characters first that inspire me. And I would say at this stage, 15 books in, the series is a soap opera with murders. People are. I don't get emails about the plot. Occasionally I do, but mostly I get emails going, "Oh, I'm really worried about that character because there was a character discovered they had cancer in one book, and there was a character gets pregnant in another book, and people are really worried that they're going to be all right and good." And the best compliment I've ever had was there's a character at the moment that's pregnant in the series, and I've had 2 people contact me that say they'd started knitting and then realised that the babies weren't going to exist. So they actually started knitting
They're like,
these fictional babies, and then they went, "Oh no, what are we doing?" So 2 people had contacted me about that. So it becomes that. It's nice when that happens. That kind of connection people form. So characters for me is what it's all about.
Yeah, that's really great. What is your writing schedule? What does that kind of look like? How do you really plot out, or do you kind of just roll with it?
It varies really. Like I generally know who done it with the crime stuff. With the other stuff, I always had a vague idea of where it was going, but quite often didn't end up there. With the crime fiction stuff, I like to at least know who's responsible for the murder in the first chapter. So I know that. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that sometimes doesn't change, but generally speaking, that's fixed in place. And it's much easier to write if I do plot it out. Like I wish I had the discipline to meticulously plot every part of it, because when I do that, I can write a book incredibly quickly and incredibly stress-free, and it just sort of happens. When I don't plot it in much detail, it's a stressful thing. You're constantly sort of tearing it out of your head, going, "Oh God, what happens next?" So I wish I had the discipline to do that. But I'm always so excited to start. That's the problem. Yeah. It's almost like, "Oh no, I know what I can just go and I can figure out as I go." So it's kind of a bit of both. There's some light plotting involved. In terms of actual kind of writing process, I write in the mornings. I use a thing called Pacemaker, a bit of software, and I go, the book will be 90,000 words, 100,000 words, whatever. I want to finish it by this date, and I want to take weekends off. And Pacemaker then goes, "Right, you have to write 2,000 words a day." And I hit that every day, basically. And if I don't hit that, then I haven't done my job properly. I never get that writer's block thing. I think because for the last, since 2010, 2007 actually, when I got the deals with HarperCollins, 2010 the first book came out. Since 2007, my children's ability to eat has been entirely reliant on me being able to write words.
Yeah.
And so I never get that thing of going, blank screen's always scary, but I never let it stay blank for long. It's that thing of like, well, I have these words to write. Because writer's block, I always think is a bit of it, because you don't get writer's block in any other job. You don't get policeman's block. You don't get none of that stuff. They have a job to do, and some days it's easier to do than others.
Yeah.
But that's just like any other job.
Yeah, it's just important to kind of get the words down.
Yeah, it is. And I think having that number mindfully helps. Having that fixed goal of going, right, I have these number of words must be written, otherwise I haven't done my job. Yeah. I think just going, oh, that feels fine. I would kind of tap out about 1,000 words and go, that feels like enough.
Yeah.
But having that number fixed in stone, then that really helps me focus.
Definitely. And what does your editorial process look like? Do you kind of edit as you go along, or do you have a draft and send it off to an editor?
I write the first draft from completion. I think the reason I do that, so I write the whole thing in one go. I used to edit as I went along when I first started writing, and that meant that I never finished those books. Because you would always go, okay, I'll go back and check, oh no, that needs tweaking, and I'll go back and check. So I would get about a third of the way through the book, and I would just keep honing that third. So I'd have a great first third of a book, but I would never get beyond it, because I'd always find something that could be changed. Mm-hmm. So for me, the first draft is like the sort of lump of clay on a potter's wheel. That you can shape that once it exists, but until you've got that first draft, you have nothing. A third of a book is not a book. So the first draft, a terrible first draft, is infinitely better than a great, 5 chapters, because that's nothing. So I get the first draft done, and then leave it a couple of days. I'll then go back and I'll work through and edit it myself, and then I'll send it off to the editor, and she'll give her notes and all that stuff, and then it'll go to be proofed and all that.
Yeah.
And then it'll be published, and then we'll find 5 typos, which no one has spotted.
It always happens.
Yeah.
Every time.
But that's the thing. There was that thing of when people going, oh, self-published books, they're always full of typos. I have found that not to be the case. I found the worst case of that was when I was writing for HarperCollins, and they published 13,000 copies of a book of mine, with the top of page 17 on page 18, and all the apostrophes had been replaced with double quotation marks. So like don't was D-O-N, double quotation marks T. Yeah. And that's HarperCollins, one of the biggest publishers in the world. They then pulped all 13,000 copies. They reprinted 13,000 copies from the same file, pulped those 13,000 copies, and then fixed it.
Oh no! So
I have like 10 my author copies of the first edition, which have all the mistakes, and then the first one that went on sale was third edition, because edition 2 was just destroyed when they realised. Right, I think it just came off the printing press straight into the pulping machine.
Yeah. Straight away.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. You set up your own digital first publisher.
Yes.
We would love to hear about that.
Right. Well, it was kind of just a way of just making it all a bit more formal and official, really. When I was doing the Space Team books, I was just doing them as myself, sole trader, and just kind of felt a bit ad hoc and a bit not unprofessional, but just a bit kind of slung together. Yeah. So what we wanted to do when I was kind of moving towards a crime fiction, I thought, well, let's look at this as a proper publishing company. So we wanted to get into doing, foreign rights sales. We wanted to be getting, film rights sales, audio sales. So we thought we'll set up as a limited company. And to start with, we were just publishing my books. We're still at the moment just publishing my books. Yeah. But we work with, rights agents in the US, the UK, and so it's much more like an actual publishing company. We have people working with us and all that stuff. And so I no longer just do everything myself, which is how I started out. Because when I started Space Team, I had no money to spend on it. It was like, I can't afford to take a chance on this. So I designed the covers myself. I did all the manuscript. I edited it all myself and formatted it and marketed it, everything solo. So now, thankfully, we're able to. I outsource all these bits to different people, and I kind of try and focus as much as possible on just writing it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you are the only person that can do that.
Yeah, bit. Well, that's it. I was finding that bit, like, there are people that can do all the other stuff much better than I can. People can design covers far better than I can, and people know more about marketing, and people can do, go to book fairs and sell rights and all that. But I'm the only one that can write the books, So it's about focusing on that bit that you're good at, and then trying to get people who have other skills to kind of complement that. So that's what we've been doing for the last few years, and it's finally sort of starting to feel like a lot of the weight has been lifted off my shoulders.
Yeah, totally. I saw the other day on your like Facebook fan group that you asked about covers to your readers.
Yeah, that's the first time I've done that. Really, yeah. I'm going between two different styles of cover for a sort of spin-off I'm doing, and I thought I'd ask them. I have a really active reader group, so mailing list. If I send out an email, I'll get 300 responses to it, and people just tell me about their day and all that stuff, and I try to reply to as many as I can. And the Facebook group, they're all really kind of like the group's self-sustaining now. They kind of chat amongst themselves, and like last Christmas, there was some readers who were kind of on their own at Christmas, and so we did some set up some like quizzes and things for Christmas Day, and they all got together on the group and chatted, and so it was nice. It's like a little kind of community that has developed around it, and so I call it the JD Kirk VIP Club. So it's free membership to the VIP Club, and you get some you get photos of the local area, and you get some extra bonus scenes and all that sort of stuff. And I think people just like feeling like when people enjoy something, they like kind of feeling like a part of something with other people who enjoy it. It becomes that little tribe of people that are like you. So that's how I looked at all sort of. I don't do a lot of marketing as such. I hate, and I always have done. I hate kind of going up and going, "Hey, buy this book, it's great." When I did, the kids' books, I basically did stand-up comedy for kids and occasionally mentioned the fact that I'd written some books because I hate that sort of hard sell thing. So for me, it's always been about building that community around the books, whether that's the Space Team series or the crime series, and that seems to work really well. And people, people who are part of that want to bring their friends into it, so they recommend the books and all that stuff. So they kind of then do the selling for it. They become advocates for the books, really.
Yeah, so it's like all about building that community, understanding what they like and what they don't like, and interacting with them, and then they bring people in by word of mouth.
That's it, yeah. And I think by doing that, you also just get a feel of what they like and what sort of books they're interested in, and that has helped kind of steer kind of what I'm doing going forward. It doesn't dictate plots or anything like that, but I kind of go, well, people are interested in this character, and I might try and do something with them differently, or although it's actually worked kind of the opposite for that, because the two spin-offs I've done feature probably the least popular characters of the series, so it almost becomes like a challenge.
Yeah.
People will go, "Oh, I hate that character," and I go, "Right, I'm going to make you like them."
I will make you like them.
You're going to go, "Oh, actually, you've changed my mind." So it becomes kind of a challenge to do that. So because there's a character that everyone loves, I think it's quite difficult then to do something all that interesting with them. You know what I mean? It's that thing of they might not have what it takes to stand on their own as a character if they're just everyone likes them. I think you need that edge to them that makes them interesting.
Yeah, completely. And I think that's what's exciting about being independent, is that you can do those things.
Yeah, you can experiment with all these things. Yeah, there's no one to say no. I don't know. Like the spin-off thing I did, which was picking one of the most unpopular characters. I know if I had gone to a publisher and said, "Right, everyone hates this guy, I want to write 3 books about him," they would have said, "Well, don't do that. That's madness." And maybe it was madness, but like they've people really enjoy them. They've done really well. So clearly it wasn't. Interestingly, actually, when I said 3 books, the spin-off series, it was going to be a 3-book spin-off, and it's now a 4-book spin-off because the first book was called Northwind, the second one was called Southpaw, and the third one was called Westward. And it was my son who said, "Well, you can't not do a 4th book. You can't have North, South, and West and not do a 4th one." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a fair point." Yeah, so I had to come up with one that started with East as well. So that comes out in December. So that's called Eastgate, and it's set in the Eastgate shopping centre in Inverness.
Oh,
basically Die Hard in a shopping centre, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
With a lot of swearing and an angry Scottish man. So,
I'm intrigued already.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time to any point in your journey so far and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I shouldn't have been writing advice, otherwise I would just say go and invest money in Apple. Buy Apple and Tesla stocks. Writing advice, I think it would genuinely be get started on KDP sooner. You know, I started writing full time 2007. First book came out 2010, and I was so focused on traditional. I was convinced traditional publishing was the only way. And Kindle kind of came out, and I just sort of ignored it. And I thought, well, that's self-publishing, and there's still that bit of a stigma around it. Like, well, that's just people that can't get published traditionally, and that's obviously not the case. Certainly, you know, in the last 5, 6 years, 7 years, it's people who are making that choice to do that, and for me, it is definitely the right choice to make. It's night and day as far as I'm concerned between using KDP to self-publish and traditional publishing. I would not accept a traditional publishing offer if it came now for any amount of money or any amount of, because it's about the creative freedom that it gives me. So yeah, my advice would be, as soon as KDP opened up, would be move to that, and then I would be, I'd have a head start on where I am now. But yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, that's great.
So, which is good advice for anyone. I was talking to someone last night who wants to write, and they've been pitching to agents for the last 3 years and haven't heard anything back, and from their query letters, and just got like 3 books written. And it's like, well, there's an option, go and talk. And so she's looking at that now. So I'm kind of going to be working with her to get them online for her and things. And, so yeah, that'd be my advice. Just go with KDP.
Yeah, just go for it. That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you. And we'd love to know, what are you excited for next?
Well, I'm doing something. I've got my spin-off coming out in June. So I'm quite excited for that. But I'm doing something completely different. Because I like... I've written lots of different things throughout my career. I've written kids' books, fiction, non-fiction. I've written science fiction. I've written the Beano. I wrote for the Beano for ages.
Oh, amazing!
And comics and stuff. And I've done TV writing and things. So I'm always kind of looking for the next sort of challenge. So I've got a film at the moment. I'm about to write. I risked writing another feature-length screenplay. And that's been picked up by a company in the US, and hopefully that's going to be in production next year. But I have a whole new series, that I want to write, which is kind of a detective series, but it's set in the city of the dead, which is basically where anyone who ever dies finds themselves in this city, this big, vast, endless metropolis full of billions upon billions of people, and it's about an old Wild West sheriff who becomes kind of the law in this lawless sector of the city, basically. So it's kind of crime fiction, but weird.
That's the best.
So it's kind of fantasy, crime, sort of. It's a weird mashup. And the bad guy's a Viking, and he has a little angry Scottish sidekick, and yeah, lots of weird stuff going on in it.
Oh, that's amazing. That sounds really great. And we'll all keep an eye out for that. Whereabouts can people find you if they want to follow you anywhere? Or
yeah, I would just go to jdkirk.com. Everything's linked to from there. So jdkirk.com, you can join the free VIP club and get lots of free short stories and all that stuff. And from there you can go to Facebook, you can go to Twitter, you can go to Instagram, and all the usual places, really. I don't do TikTok because it's too much faffing about.
Fair enough. Yeah, we'll link that down in the description below.
Cool. Thank
you. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's really appreciated.
You're very welcome. Lovely chat. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.